of the Elden Ring closed beta, we were lucky enough to get early access to the build for a few days. And let me tell you, it is a generous helping of early game Elden Ring. Now, it's fair to say I've played it a lot, just short of 23 hours in fact. And I think I've scoured pretty much every inch of West Limgrave, the starting area for the game. So let me take you through everything I've found. That includes secrets, dragon slaying, hidden NPCs, mini-bosses, rare summons and spells, and more. Consider this a spoiler warning. I'm going to be showing off a lot of new gameplay footage, so maybe hang back if you're planning on going into Elden Ring totally fresh. We'll have a more in-depth tips video coming on Saturday too, so look out for that to be sure you don't miss out on any of the details. So this early look at Elden Ring begins right at the start of the game. For the purposes of this beta, there are 5 character presets for you to choose from, though of course there'll be a full character creation menu in the main game. Now, each of the 5 presets comes with pretty decent equipment, so choosing one is really about what preferred playstyle you're keen to try out. Bloody Wolf is a great choice for melee builds, though Enchanted Knight is an incredibly strong all-rounder, with a 100% physical damage reduction shield, fancy armor, and some unique spells. But if you want to make full use of a pretty amazing spell that you can learn in the beta by completing a few challenges, you want to make sure you have a character with high faith stats, and so the Prophet or Champion would give you an early start there. Our best advice though would be to try out a few different builds and get the feel for all of them. For our early access, we concentrated on and completed pretty much all of the content with the 3 different builds I've already mentioned: the Enchanted Knight, the Bloody Wolf, and the Prophet. And it felt like this gave us a good sense of the game's many different systems. So when you start Elden Ring and complete the game's optional tutorial, you'll arrive out in the open world. And from here, you can go pretty much wherever you like. These Sites of Grace are Elden Ring's equivalent of bonfires, and you'll want to touch these whenever you get the chance. You can fast travel freely between these sites that are out in the world by selecting them from your map. Because yes, in a first for a Souls-like game, Elden Ring has a map. So it's useful to have as many unlocked as possible. Also though, once you unlock 3 Sites of Grace and then actually rest at the 3rd, you'll be visited by Melina, a so-called Finger Maiden, stop laughing back there, who will level you up and fill you in on the lore of the world as you travel. During this first meeting, she'll also gift you a ring that allows you to summon your spectral steed, whose name is Torrent. You will definitely want to unlock Torrent as quickly as possible, as they make getting around on the open world much faster and easier. Torrent can take damage and can technically die, but will be available again once you rest up. Or you can sacrifice one of your health flasks to bring them back immediately. Be aware too that Torrent has a double jump, which can be very handy when exploring or escaping certain enemies. And there are special points throughout the map that you can use as a kind of super jump to access otherwise unreachable areas. Back to the Sites of Grace though, and there are a lot of things you can do while resting at one. From leveling up and redistributing your flasks, to setting your available spells and Ashes of War abilities. There's also one wolf-ridden cave that you can visit early on in the game to obtain a wondrous physic flask. This item allows you to combine effects via special tiers to give yourself boosts, or blow yourself up if you're not careful. And this can also be set at Sites of Grace. There weren't a ton of options for it during the beta, but it'll be exciting to see what kind of effects you can concoct later in the game. Now, even though he's one of the first things you see, we do not advise fighting this guy, the Tree Sentinel right off the bat. Instead, you can use Elden Ring's sneaking mechanic to make it to the building behind him, which is kind of the closest thing to a hub you'll find in the beta. Inside, there's a site of grace, a merchant called Calais, and an anvil you can use alongside smithing fragments to upgrade your weapons and shields. Talk to the merchant. He offers some good stuff, and we recommend taking the crafting kit and the wolf and sorcerer ashes as soon as you can, as well as a torch as soon as you can afford it. Now, crafting is new to From Software's Souls-like games, and you'll notice pretty quickly in Elden Ring that resources are everywhere out in the world, from enemy drops to the surprisingly rich ecosystem. Plants and animals are kind of everywhere in Elden Ring. This is a vibrant world that is still very much alive, in contrast to the decayed, desiccated world of Dark Souls or the twisted gore of Bloodborne. Recipes for crafting can be obtained from cookbooks, and you will find a bunch in the demo, either for sale from merchants or tucked away in chests. Craftable items include those that negate poison or bleed buildup. Some will boost a specific stat for a limited amount of time. Some will heal torrent. It's really worth having a look in your crafting menu every now and again for something that might help you out. Now, in all honesty, we didn't really feel like we had much of a need for it in this particular beta, but it's definitely likely that there will be more use for crafted items as the main game gets more challenging. And let's be honest, knowing From Software, there's definitely going to be some obscure little secrets hidden away in there too. So if you're feeling intimidated by the difficulty level in these sorts of games, you should probably know that there are lots of little touches in Elden Ring that are designed to give you a helping hand when you want it. However, fans of Souls games should not worry. The challenge is still very much there for sure, but now you'll find small additions here and there to streamline the experience and make it work in an open world environment. For example, when you defeat an entire group of enemies, you'll see that your flasks of Crimson and Cerulean Tears, which top up your health and magic bars respectively, are partially replenished. In the open world and in dungeons when you die, you'll have the option to respawn as usual at a site of grace. However, if a particular statue is nearby, you may have the option to respawn at a stake of Marika instead. These statues tend to crop up before some boss encounters, which means that although you won't have as many options as you would if you'd respawned at a site of grace, you can cut out those long treks back to the boss room if you so wish. You can tell when you're in a Stake of Marika area by the small statue icon that appears under your status bars on the top left corner of the screen. Another optional assist you can find in Elden Ring is the NPC Spirit Summons, which are reusable items you can find throughout the world. We found a total of 5 in the closed beta. These summons can be used anytime you see a glowing tombstone icon on the left side of your screen, but they cannot be used when you're in or looking for a multiplayer session. The Spirit Summons are basically a stand-in for multiplayer help and the NPC summons of previous From Software games, and we do recommend trying out the different varieties in the demo. The Lone Wolves are great for running distraction, for example, while the Sorcerer can stand back and deal magic damage from afar. If you do a little exploring, you can also find the Spirit Jellyfish Summon, which can be a game changer for one challenging boss fight in particular. Speaking of, there are absolutely tons of optional bosses in this small slice of the game. The only one that seems key to Elden Ring's story and the progression of the main game is Margit the Fell Omen, who you can find on the approach to Stormvale Castle. More on that in a little bit. But there are loads more mini-bosses hidden away in smaller dungeons as well. There's trolls, beastmen, zombie watchdog cats, grave wardens, demi-humans. The rewards for besting these bosses range from new weapons, to cookbooks, to ashes of war that allow you to equip new abilities to your arsenal. So the bosses are well worth seeking out, not least because the caves and catacombs in which they tend to reside are hiding plenty of other secrets too. That said, there are also loads of unique enemies in the beta that aren't even considered to be bosses, and they can often be tucked away in the farthest reaches of the map, so make sure and explore everywhere. Some may only come out at night. One of the main things that struck us about this early access look at Elden Ring, though, is that the Ashes of War are well worth experimenting and playing around with. Your current active effect is displayed on the left-hand side of your screen, and it's initiated by pressing L2. These can range from Holy Ground, which is equipped to shields and summons a healing circle, to Thunderbolt and Ordovis's Vortex, which looks very, very flashy. Our personal favourite though is Glintsword Arch, which summons multiple magic blades that follow you and strike your enemy in a pretty powerful attack. Ashes of War can be customised at any site of grace, but not all of them can be used on all weapons. Some are permanently fixed to particular weapons and shields, and some can only be used when a weapon is being wielded with either one or two hands. Now these effects can really change up how you play. They made every build we experienced surprisingly versatile, and they help make the combat of Elden Ring really shine. Top tip, we recommend the Coiled Shield's Viper Bite for inflicting poison damage on more challenging boss enemies if you're having trouble. On that note, Margit the Fell Omen, who guards the entrance to the Stormveil Castle Legacy Dungeon, is a pretty tough challenge, but is definitely manageable. The spirit summons, spells, and Viper Bite ability that we mentioned can help if you're having trouble. And it's worth sticking with it, because once you defeat Margit, you'll be able to explore part of the castle beyond, where some unique and terrifying enemies are hiding. So make sure and explore all available paths.
Oi! You there! Could you help us out, Cully?
Bear in mind too, sometimes it's just worth riding out into the world and seeing what you encounter. That's how we happened to stumble upon an NPC who had inadvertently been turned into a tree. And there's more to their questline if you stop for a chat.
Some clod turned me into a tree.
Probably the greatest challenge of the Elden Ring closed beta though, is taking down the flying dragon Agiel, who spawns in the northwest area of the lake. Now we've defeated Agiel with 3 different builds, and it's been interesting how each one has called for a different approach to combat. While fighting on horseback is certainly recommended, and it just looks pretty awesome, it isn't impossible to defeat the dragon without, so don't get discouraged if Torrent falls early. Also, it seems like you can only use right-handed weapons on horseback, so make sure to make the necessary preparations ahead of time. And if you want to track down the previously mentioned Spirit Jellyfish Ashes, that summon has a chance to inflict poison on Agiel, which, if it works, will definitely help you bring down the Great Dragon much faster. This is an epic fight, and it is a lot of fun. Plus, you can use the item that you get for defeating Agiel at a specific location on the map to be granted a very powerful spell. As we mentioned before though, this spell needs a faith level of 15 to use, so consider getting a head start on that by choosing either the champion or the prophet preset builds. Okay, so in case it isn't clear, we absolutely loved our early access time with Elden Ring. There are enough new tweaks and touches to make this feel like a fresh take on the Souls formula, not least the stunning open world you're free to explore. But it still feels reassuringly familiar to a Soulsborne fan. That's me. With enough optional additions that should help new players feel empowered to give Elden Ring a try. This was a very generous helping of what the full game will offer, and yet, despite sinking so many hours into it, we still came away hungry for more. And you know, I'm not really sure I can give a more positive response than that. As I said before, we have loads more Elden Ring content coming to the channel very soon, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on any of it. And I will see you in the game, Tarnished. Bye!